On the 20th of October 2019, in the always busy financial sector of Amsterdam in the Zuidas, a 52-year-old woman steps into a black car. She could not have imagined what would happen next, not even in her worst nightmare. The car drove off, and until this day, more than 3 years later, no one has seen her or heard from her ever again. But there's much more to the story. Quite interesting and question-raising pictures were found on the cell phone of one of the biggest criminals in the world. What was his role in the story, and why did he have those pictures? Those are some of the questions we are left with, waiting to be unraveled. This is the story of Naima Jillal, the Dutch godmother of coke. Naima Jillal was born in Morocco on the 4th of January 1967. Later on, she would move to the Netherlands. It is unclear how she made her way into the underworld. There is very little information known about her because she has done quite a good job remaining under the radar. It was not until she was 47 in 2014 when her name would pop up. That is when she was first linked to selling substances on a large scale. She was aware that her name was becoming more well known in the Netherlands. She appeared in several investigations into international drug trafficking. She decided to move to the Spanish city of Marbella, a city well known for its nice weather and beaches, but is also considered to be an international hub for the biggest criminals in Europe. In Marbella is where she would be nicknamed the Godmother of Coke. It was odd for an innocent-looking, middle-aged woman to be so deep in the underworld. She was operating from her large mansion in Marbella. Drug gangs could buy room from her in sea containers with bananas or pineapples. This room, the Dutch word for cream, was a different name for kilos of cocaine. By facilitating this, Naima Jillal's business would grow rapidly, and she became a key player in drug trafficking business. She spent her earnings on houses in Amsterdam and Spain, very expensive designer clothes, handbags, and jewellery. She ordered over 700,000 euros in watches at once, with 2 big jewellers in Amsterdam and Spain. Furthermore, she lived a life full of opulence and would not take no for an answer from anyone. Her eagerness to fulfill her needs made her greedy. She tweaked her business model ever so slightly, in such a way that she was bound to make enemies. She started to oversell the room she had in these containers. She sold more kilos of coke than had actually been shipped. That way, she earned more money, but simultaneously made people mad because they paid and did not get their coke. The consequences of her actions would be unfathomable. Would you have taken the same risk as her? Let me know in the comments. When 2 overseas containers with pineapples from Costa Rica were on the brink of being discovered, disaster struck for Naima Jillal. Among the pineapples, there were kilos of coke. One container was carrying nearly 4,000 kilos of coke. The containers were in the port of Antwerp, one of the biggest ports in the world and a hub for trafficking. When word got out that the 2 containers were scheduled to be scanned, Jillal and her accomplices got stressed. Intercepted messages from their encrypted phones went as follows: Aunt, also one of Jillal's nicknames. Both of the containers are scheduled for scanning. We are doomed, Aunt. We cannot pick them up. Another message reads, this is going to cost us so much money and long jail sentences, Aunt. Costa is going to be pissed off. Everything is ruined. Remember the name Costa. He will be vital for what is about to happen next. After a while, it was confirmed. The containers were scanned and the entire shipment was seized by police. The following days, the traffickers who were involved started to speculate on what had happened and who was responsible. Jillal knew she was in serious trouble and started to do some damage control. Costa was later revealed to be Roger P., a Dutch trafficker that is involved in the coke trade for a long while now. Jillal texted Costa, we just have to start over again and come up with a new story for now. Costa only texted back, right. Costa knew there was something fishy going on, and Jillal's clock started ticking. In March 2021, Belgian and Dutch police found supposed tracks that could be linked to Jillal. In a large warehouse in the port of Antwerp, a purse and some clothing were found. It was not just stuffed somewhere in a dark corner, no. The items were actually under a cement floor. Via several clues, the use of sniffer dogs and a ground radar, it was determined that there was something underneath the floor, because it was a newly laid cement floor. The police had to excavate the floor to find the evidence. They found the purse and some women's clothing. They had also hoped to find Naima Jillal herself, but unfortunately, that was not the case. What is interesting is that the warehouse this has happened in was the same warehouse where the big batch of coke was discovered that caused a lot of trouble for Jillal. Coincidence? You tell us. What would be discovered next is absolutely terrifying and mind-blowing. The police heard through the grapevine that there were pictures circulating in the underworld. Those pictures were quite graphic. The police did not see the pictures themselves yet, but they heard it was supposedly Naima in a very tough situation. Another photo reportedly showed an even worse situation. Please use your imagination a little. I cannot entirely describe the photos. Sad and unfortunate photos. But the police had yet to see them with their own eyes. That is where a major plot twist happens. They finally get to see those exact photos because of the hacked encrypted messages database Sky ECC. However, what is even more interesting is the fact that these photos were found on a phone used by none other than Ridwan Taghi, one of the biggest criminals ever in the Netherlands. After analysing the metadata of the pictures, it is clear that the pictures were taken on the night of the 20th to the 21st of October, a short while after midnight. Do you remember? Naima Jillal stepped in a black car on the 20th of October around 10:30 in the evening. That means that she only lived a few more hours after being picked up. And those hours must have been really hard. Taghi's lawyer, Miss Ines Vesky, denies any allegations and says that the phone was not used by her client. An additional person of interest in the disappearance of Naima Jillal is a Dutch criminal, Jos L., also known as Bolle Jos. Bolle Jos is a relatively young criminal. He was born in 1991. He quickly rose up the ranks and is arguably one of the biggest Dutch criminals at the moment. He is internationally wanted, and he still remains on the run. Word on the street is that he is a ruthless, cold-hearted person who does not shy away from bringing his anger upon anyone that appears in his way. Upon further inspection, police found out that Jos L. did business with Costa. Costa in his turn did business with Jillal. All evidence is pointing towards that Jos L. invested heavily in the large shipment that turned out to be busted by police in the port of Antwerp. Allegedly, when he asked Costa what happened and who was responsible, Costa told Jos that Jillal was responsible for the shipment. Jos L. demanded Jillal to explain what had happened and demanded her to come and explain herself in person. That is exactly what she thought she would be doing when she stepped in that black car on the 20th of October 2019 in Amsterdam. Yet unfortunately for her, that explanation did not seem to be enough, and the only way to repay Jos was with her own faith. Fast forward to 2023. Thus far, there is still no sign of Naima Jillal. Family members have not been able to contact her, and no other information about her whereabouts have been found. There have been some people arrested, but that has not led to anything yet. The Dutch police have put out an award of €10,000 for the person who leads them to Jillal, but nothing thus far. It is not looking like she will be found or heard of ever again. She rose fast, but her downfall might have been even faster. Jillal overplayed her hand and had to pay the price. A very costly price at that. Costa said in court that he had nothing to do with what happened. Jos L. is still on the run, but his lawyer said that her clients did not have anything to do with the disappearance of Naima Jillal. Taghi's lawyer, Miss Ines Vesky, also said that her client did not have anything to do with it either. It is unsure why he had those photos on his phone. Taghi is now serving life in a maximum security jail in the Netherlands. In a sense, you could say he does not have anything to lose anymore. He might as well give clarity into why he had those pictures and what his role was. But Taghi has been silent during all of his own trials as well, so I do not see that happening. Do you think we will ever hear from her again? Let me know in the comments. See you in the next one.